Hello everyone, welcome to another Stories with Redfren, where I take a minute and I kind of review some of the stories that I work on and write with co-authors. There's going to be a little bit of a different format to this video, and that is that it's going to be a bit longer. Rather than breaking them up into 10-minute or 12-minute intervals, I'm going to have this one go maybe 20 to 30 minutes and kind of stretch it out like that. You may have some audio issues here and notice that the video is a little lower, and that's because my microphone kind of shot out on me. I don't know what's wrong with it, and I'm using a basic web camera. I do not do this for monetization or money or any kind of attempt to get subscriptions or anything like that. I do this because it's entertaining and because, you know, I kind of like keeping a record of things. I'm wearing a hat. I recently cut my hair. It's kind of at that growth stage right now where it's too long to, you know, it's long enough that it looks bad, but it's short enough that you can't style it or do anything about it. So you get a hat today. But yeah, let's jump into my new story. I am writing this with a co-author. I will not be going into great detail on the co-author's side of things. I will not be talking a lot about their character or about their perception on things. Maybe later we can get that co-author to do an interview. You are familiar with this co-author. They helped write my hostage story, and they've started this one with me. So the co-author in this one is Sasha Murrin. I think I said that right. I probably messed that name up pretty bad. All right, let's get into this. The new story is A World of Magic, and just to clarify, I want to get a few things clear here. I took inspiration from a lot of different sources, but the actual story itself is original. Some of those sources include shows like The Order. What was another good one? You know, just the whole college magical thing. So yeah, Shane Silvers for some authors, Patricia Briggs. There's just a lot of influence that kind of encouraged me to write a story, and I tend to stay towards modern, and this one is taking place in a modern time, but it does have a fantasy kind of overtone to it. So yeah, let's jump into it then. The first thing is that this world, as I said, it's modern. It's a lot like our own, minus the current COVID situation. And some of the major differences in this world is, you know, the mystical arts, magic and stuff. It's real, but it's hidden. It's not generalized. It's not publicized. It's all hidden. And there's also, you know, other creatures enveloped and encompassed into this world. So there's demons, there's fae, there's shifters, there's vampires, and there's magic users. This story primarily focuses on magic users, and that's kind of the direction I was going with this. Now, there is rumors and stuff like that the government does know or has actively discovered some of these creatures and some of these magic users and things like that, but there's no concrete evidence that they're involved in the process at all at this time. For the most part, magic is still widely disbelieved. It is still considered to be fictional. It is you know, your magicians on stage and stuff like that. So there are some aspects here to magic that I wanted to change, right? And one of the things that I wanted to do, because I like to have a dark undertone to everything I do, and one of the things that I wanted to change about magic right off the bat was that there needed to be some ground rules. And in that, nothing can be created from, you know, something cannot be created from nothing. So I'm kind of all over the place here, but bear with me. In order to create magic, you need to pull from something. And this created a unique opportunity to provide darkness and also, I guess some form of realism to it. There are two types of energies that are used when attempting to use magic. And that is natural energy, which can be sunlight, water sources, moving water, grass, trees, wind, just a natural source of energy can probably be converted and then used for magic. And the other source is life energy. And this is willingly draining the life out of a living creature in order to create a magical like effect. Now, unlike natural energy, life energy is extremely powerful, right? So let's say you're using natural energy and you want it to lift something up, levitate it, right? You might get 400 or 500 pounds, and that seems like a lot. But what if you wanted to push that beyond its limit? Then you would use life energy, and that's going to allow you to pick up, 1,000, 10,000, depending on how much life energy you actually use. And yes, this life energy can be used and drained from yourself or from other people or from animals and so forth. It drains the life and fuels the magic. So that kind of gave me the dark undertone that I was looking for with the forms of magic. And regarding magic, it's kind of open-ended. I mean, I'm getting a lot of inspiration from tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons and some cyberpunk and stuff like that. But really, magic is limited to your imagination. You can kind of do anything you can think of when it comes to magic. So I needed to find a way to kind of describe how this is working. And in that, I created the mage as a conduit. So they basically draw this magic into themselves and then expel it and create what it is they're trying to do, right? So they form it. They're just a conduit. They draw it in, they push it out. And when they're pushing it out, they give it form. So that's kind of how that process worked. And the next part is, in this world, how do you stop a mage from going completely crazy, right? What if they wanted to blow something up, or they wanted to do something that would change the face of the earth? Well, there are groups of types of mages and of different kinds of groups. And one of these groups is called the Council of Mages. Another one is the Mage Tower, or the Tower of Mages. And then you've got your free users, or your outcast, and your educated mages, and so forth. And so the Council of Mages is kind of like the police, or the oversight over all of magic. And they're kind of an act first, ask questions later kind of group. They just, let's say that you have a magician on a stage, and instead of using tricks or illusions, they use real magic to try to show the audience what they're doing and become famous or whatever. It's the Council of Mages that would step in, this worldwide council, and they would act before they questioned. So even if your mage did something for the benefit of another, saved a life or something of this nature, it's the Council of Mages policy to immediately act, and then after they've done so, ask questions. And oftentimes this leads to violent and destructive ends, right? Your magician on the stage might suddenly vanish, or a accident might occur while he's on stage, and things of that nature. The Tower of Mages or the Mage Towers, they are a group of secret individuals that have come together from around the world. They have a tower in all primary sources of magic. So anywhere where magic is concentrated or gathered, anywhere where people are learning that kind of magic in mass, the tower is there. And this group is a secret organization, a lot like we would look at the Illuminati. There's so many unknowns about this group. There's so much that is circling this group that nobody can really grasp what it is they do. But they have world-changing effects. And they are equal or greater than the power equivalent to the Council of Mages. So there is no one singular body on top of everything. Excuse me. The free users or the outcast, they are referring to a whole bunch of different groups, not just one particular one, but a larger circle of groups. So your Wiccans, your pagans, your outcast, people that have dropped out of schooling, people that have gathered up in groups. These would all be referred to as free users or outcast. They are typically extremist. They practice magic without any kind of formal education. They do branch off in their ideologies quite a bit, and they change their views from the mainstream views on how things came to be, what mages are, what magic is. So they have different views on that. And these groups can become very dangerous. They can be confused in the mainstream media as worshippers of the devil or demons, modern day cults, things of this nature. So, it's just kind of one of those things where this category describes a whole bunch of different people. Then you have your regular mages, and that brings us to what the story is primarily focused on, which is mages are trained formally, educated, taught how to interact with the world, taught how to properly use magic, such as creating storage devices to store energy within themselves rather than constantly drawing it whenever they want to cast a spell. They'll have a battery within themselves that they can pull from. This is what the formal education does. And this created Vanderson University. Now, there are a lot of colleges and stuff across this world that teach magic. They are all hidden, very Harry Potter, very order, very, magic-y kind of hidden. In plain sight, but not quite there. And then, excuse me. This is why you don't smoke, right? Don't smoke. So, I created Vanderson University, and this was a task. Let me tell you, this took some time. Aside from having custom university logos, acceptance papers, images of their university website, t-shirts, I tried to get a nice feel for, at least the basics of the university logo. And that took a minute to create. Then I created the college campus. Now, true, I kind of borrowed the outline of the map from another college that is not in America, and I edited the hell out of it, right? But I needed a skeleton to start from, and this was a really easy one. It was really good, and it allowed me to create my own university, to erase all their building names, all their staff names, to add new buildings, to remove parking lots, things like that. And then I was able to just insert, the names of these buildings and this area. And I created a map, which, as I said, took time. It took some time to do this. It was not an instant thing. It was not an easy thing to do, because it needed to be unique, right? I didn't want to just pluck the image of another college and say, well, this is the magic college. I wanted that college to be unique to its own facility, and so that's why I said there's added buildings, there's minus buildings, and it just kind of took on a life of its own after you get into the swing of things. Um, yeah, the camera is super sensitive to sound, so if you're hearing music, it's a car that's driving by, and it should stop in just a minute. So I created this college, but then I needed to try and explain what each of these buildings really were and what they encompassed. And this also took a minute because I wanted images of these buildings so that people could relate to them, and I also wanted a very brief, quick reference, like at a glance kind of description of what that building entails. And there are a lot of them, right? I would easily say there's 20 buildings or so. Then I created the history of Vanderson University, and the history of Vanderson University, you know, it started in 1832 in upstate New York and kind of just became this illustrious society of mages hidden within the city itself in plain sight. And over the top of this college kind of looks like an old rundown apartment complex that for some reason still has high security around it and so forth. It exclusively originally taught Americans, and then it expanded to be a multicultural kind of exchange with students from all around the world. Battle magic, or combative magics, is taught in the school as well, but not until a student reaches their second year, right? And then there are games that were developed, right? Instead of football at this university, you have this combative school-on-school kind of magic battle that takes place in something that looks almost similar to a tennis court. You know, you've got one mage over here, you've got another mage over here, and they're kind of flinging spells back and forth at each other in a safely monitored and constructed area. And the schools kind of get together and create this whole competition that goes and plays out a lot like a football team would. So that was done. But first year students do not learn combative magic. So I haven't actually got into the story yet. I know I'm kind of going through some of the background and depth that's gone into this story. And a lot of this was so that I didn't have to bog down the story itself with these kinds of descriptions. I mean, you got 20 plus buildings. That's going to take a long time to describe in the story itself, rather than having a section or world thread that would allow people to quickly reference, what does that building look like? Well, if they have that question, they can jump over to the reference page, they can quickly look at it, and then they can go back to the story. So that's why this information is here. The next thing is unlike a normal story, this story is not primarily focused on the co-author's character and my character. It's got a very broad cast of NPCs that are highly interactive, and so I kind of took a leap here and added a lot more depth to every NPC so that they could continue to interact with the PC, that they could continue to be known, that they were not just some piece of paper that's, you know, flowed into the area and then backed away. So there are a lot, right? If you've ever looked at a college, that's a lot of professors, that's a lot of people that are running that place. The same here, right? Not to mention the students themselves. So there are a lot of NPCs, a lot. And, you know, are they all necessary? No. They're absolutely not all necessary. But it is good to have a reference in case, you know, like there was a nurse that I created at the, don't smoke, at the medical center, and that nurse only interacted with the PCs like one time, and then they kind of backed out of the story. So did I need to create a mini character sheet of that NPC, where I'm talking about their name, their height, their weight, their eyes, their hair, their age, and then some personality notes with an image that will allow you to visualize what's being described. The images are not an exact duplicate, they are a reference. But did I need to create all that for a person that only interacted with them once? No. But I did, because what if they go back to the medical center? Now I don't have to create a new NPC. I can just reference the person that already works there. So I tried to really establish a very solid foundation for a very realistic, interactive world. And that included deans, professors, just all kinds of NPCs, from students to, there's just so much. There really is. There is an overwhelming amount of NPCs that can be used and quick referenced very, very fast. And we'll get into the college stuff in just a minute, but we're working through this. The next thing was spells. Now, as I told you, spells can be limited only to your imagination. You can literally create anything you want, right? So trying to keep track of them is difficult. But I needed to do that because I didn't want a story where somebody uses a single spell and it's never heard from again, right? It's like it completely wipes out of their memory. There's no history of it. There's no knowledge of it. So they have to recreate a spell that practically does the same thing. I also wanted an area where that spell could be described in a little bit more detail and talk about the school of magic that it falls under: necromancy, divination, transmutation, alteration, illusions, right? So I created this list of spells that just continuously grows, and I mean, it is growing. There are a lot of them, right? But then we also have the lessons, right? I mean, you're playing a character. Don't smoke. You're playing a character in this world, and your character is going to college. Well, what are they learning? I mean, you can't really glance over that because it's a huge part of college. I mean, yeah, sure, there's all kinds of other stuff that's taking on its own life in college, but there are the lessons, and they are valuable, and they are heavy-hitting stuff, right? That's the primary part of college, is learning. Everything else is kind of secondary, and whenever that switches around and secondary becomes primary, you get students falling behind, you get students failing, you get students dropping out. So I have another section listed as magic lessons, and this is a little bit more detailed but a lot smaller, and it basically goes over explanations of things that student might have learned in the class, right? Transference, alternating energy, internal energy storages, warding magics, ritual magics, transmutation magics, schools of magic. So I wanted this to appear like something a student in school would actually be learning, right? And that's kind of how that whole aspect of the world thread started. Now, as for the story, I wanted to create a story about a student that is going to college and meets and interacts and finds a relationship with one of their professors. However, my experience with college is very different. I did not live on campus. I did not interact with people. I did not do a full college term. I went for a very specific reason. I lived at home. I went to the college campus. I did my work and I left because I had a very specialized field that I was trying to get into, and I didn't need all that other stuff. I just needed a certificate that stated that I did accomplish and learn what it is I'm supposed to be doing. So my experience with college is vastly different, and as a result, I knew nothing about it, right? What is it like to live on campus? What is it like to interact with these? Because if my professor, and when I was in college, if my professor said, I'm sorry, you're past the turn-in window, you're going to have to do a makeup assignment or something else like that, I was not that person that would be like, oh, that sucks, I'm going to have to do all this. I was the person that walked up to the teacher or the professor, and I told them, I'm paying you. I don't live on campus. I'm not goofing around. I'm not out there drinking. I'm not out there partying. I am paying you to accomplish a very specific goal, and because I'm 5 minutes late, you're not going to accept my assignment. I don't accept that. And yeah, you got your hard asses where they're like, well, if you don't like it, go speak to admin and stuff like that. But for the majority of them, they would accept it. They would accept it, right? Because there are things that pop up, and I just, sometimes you just turn in assignments late. It just happens. The point is that it's very different when you're a student that was out partying all night, and then you try to come up with an excuse for a professor that knows you're lying. You're treating college like high school, only with more freedom. And so I can understand why some of them are the way they are, but at the same time, it isn't high school. You are paying them to do a job, and you are paying them, right? So it's like, they need to remember that. They need to remember that you are the one paying them. Anyway, let's get back into the concept here. The story my goal here was to have a student fall in love with a professor and have them interact with that taboo kind of overshadowing their school life. And the first thing I needed to do was history, right? I needed to learn when colleges became so strict like they are today, right? Because today, could a college professor date a student? They can. Is it common? No. And there are all kinds of rules around it, right? But you are dealing with two fully grown adults, so they can't prevent it, but there are a lot of rules around it. And there are some colleges that will not allow fraternization. That's true. But there are some that do not care. But there are still rules, right? We have all kinds of sexual harassment rules now. We have all kinds of favoritism rules now, selectivism rules now, just all kinds of stuff that really prevents a professor from taking advantage of their students. And I needed to know when that changed and how it changed. Was it the colleges that changed this aspect of school, or was it the government? Where did the oversight come in? And so I started doing the research, and really the big hitters, the big changes started coming in the 40s up into the 60s, but during the 60s and 70s, there were some massive changes taking place because there were some real horror stories out there about, women even attending school. For a long time, they even couldn't, right? They just couldn't. For a long time, women couldn't be educated. And then when they finally did receive education, it was a terrible situation, absolutely horrid. If you're interested in history, I absolutely recommend you look this up, because the female rights and what they had and what they fought for and what they have today is so insane to read about. I mean, it is literally just this huge difference in the way people were treated, the way they were spoken to, everything. And because there were no sexual harassment laws, wow, right? It was just bad. It was a really bad situation, and they powered through it, and it's changed, thankfully. So if you had a college that was self-sufficient and was not governed by outside sources, nor was it judged by outside sources, what could that college get away with, right? And what have they tried to get away with in the past when this was the case? That was my goal for looking up this kind of information, because Vanderson University and the other colleges are not monitored by the government. They are not viewed by outside sources. They are not judged by the general public. And the only people that control what happens and what goes on in that school is the college itself, right? Unless it becomes public knowledge, which then falls into the Mage Council. Don't smoke. So, once I got that established, it was pretty clear that a lot of shady stuff would be happening. Now, we still have modern morals, right? So you're not going to have women being treated like they were in the 30s and the 40s, but it isn't going to be far from that, because colleges did some pretty shady shit, right? From paying high school students or other students to take part in their sports, to fudging grades so that they could maintain this sports scholarship, all kinds of stuff. Paying off teachers. I mean, that's still happening today, right? Where rich people will pay off a professor in order to have their student pass. Well, that was a lot more common back in the day. So, I mean, and then you have entire school oversight where one person might donate a massive amount of money to the school in order to help their student skate through the whole thing. A lot of shady shit. So I needed to encompass a lot of that into the college itself. Now, are all the professors doing this kind of stuff? Is the college this heavily invested in it? Not really. A lot of professors are unique. A lot of their personalities are a little off, and that's kind of to be expected because you're dealing with a very eccentric group. But yeah, not all of them are doing this, right? But there are some that are definitely taking advantage of these students. My character was one of them, right? Absolutely balls to the wall, did not care who knew, favors for grades, attention for better grading scales. It was a mess, and there were a lot of them. My character was not a good guy. I do bear in mind that this is a horror story. Okay, so it does have a horrific undertone, especially when it comes to sexual situations and things like that. I do not recommend you read this if you are offended by these things. I do not recommend that you get involved in this kind of stuff. If you know somebody that's suffering from this, seek help, get them help, because this stuff is bad. This is a fictional story. It is not real. It is meant to be horrific. It is meant to be disturbing. I cannot emphasize that enough. It is not real. Okay, so my character's doing all this kind of bad stuff before he meets the other character, right? And I guess the first thing I needed to learn about was, what is it like to live in a college, right? What is college life like? Luckily, social media has really exploded lately, and so there's a massive amount of knowledge out there to be gained. You've got YouTubes, you've got Twitters, you've got Reddits, you've got Facebooks, you've got all kinds of stuff where college students, those who are still in college and those who have graduated college, are explaining what life is like, what terms were what things were. Basically giving you a very detailed life hack to college. And it helped a lot. I easily did, a week or more of just straight learning and knowledge, watching videos, reading testimonies, reading people's experiences. What is a college party like? I'd never been to one, so I had no idea. Again, it's a pretty popular aspect of college, so there's a lot of information on there. And I had to learn the differences between Greek row, a sanctioned party, a unsanctioned party, a frat house party or a sorority party versus a house party or a private party. I had to learn all of this, right? And what time do parties start? What are the differences between parties? What happens at these parties, right? I'm an older guy, right? I don't know this stuff, and I didn't take part in this stuff, so I kind of feel like I missed out a huge chunk of my life by skipping this aspect of it. But at the same time, I don't think I would have liked it very much. All right. So after I've learned all of this, I had to add in magic, right? Because if you think about college, at least your experience with college, especially if you lived on the campus, then you probably have a general idea of what I'm talking about when I talk about frat parties, Greek row, things of that nature. Imagine these students with the capability of using magic. It would be even more crazy than it already is. So I had to kind of encompass that into it, and it worked out really well. You've got kids levitating, you've got fireworks going up in the sky from people's hands, you've got bonfires where people are making images out of the fire. Crazy shit. The other thing I found out is that, sexual assaults, attempted rapes, things of this nature are extremely common in college. There is a reported 45% of all women who attend a college of some kind will experience something of that nature at some point during their college years. That's terrible. Don't misunderstand. That's a terrible statistic. And that statistic is lower, right? That's what's being reported. Many students do not report these incidents. They either didn't have to suffer through it, or they were able to escape it and they didn't want to bring a lot of attention to the situation, and they just didn't report it. So this 45% is reported activity. It is not the actual activity. I found out that this happens more frequently in frat houses, and especially at frat parties. It also happens more frequently at unsanctioned parties or house parties where they are away from the campus and they do not have security there. So, it was a big deal to find this out because, again, I don't know anything about college life, so I need to learn the good, the bad, and the ugly in order to make a proper story around it. If I want the story to even seem somewhat believable, I have to have a basic understanding of what the hell I'm talking about. Then I had to figure out what it's like to live in a dorm. Luckily, there are a lot of videos where people give tours. They give video tours, 3D tours of their entire dorm room. They explain the whole roommate situation. They explain the differences between general dorms, vanity dorms, private dorms, frat houses, things like that. So there's a lot of information out there to really give a good description of what dorm life is like, especially the showers, which anybody that's lived in a dorm absolutely knows they are the best places to go. You should go in there barefoot. You should then do the jig, stay in the shower as long as you possibly can, because everybody loves it. But yeah, so I found out all this stuff. Don't smoke. I found out all this stuff, and then I wanted to do some deeper dives. Are college professors flirting with students? Is this something that's happening today? Did it happen in the past? How bad was it? Things like that. And again, one of those, hold on just a second. Yeah, we're going to pause right here because my cats are going crazy.